Hi guys, Thursday 3rd of September, just gone 9 o'clock in the morning on the east coast of Australia where I am. It's just gone midnight in the UK, just gone 7 o'clock in the evening on the east coast of the United States, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the west coast. I'm here because Q has put up a number of new drops. It's been a while. This post came in at 1:33 my time this morning, post 4628. He gives us a link which is to an FBI site talking about the Sentinel system. This system is for employees of the FBI who are required to record all activity and document all information using case files. The case file is the central system for holding the records, and it's known as Sentinel. Q says files don't go missing unless the 7th floor direct involvement. And I can only think that Q's talking about this situation here that Sarah Carter brought to our attention yesterday, that told us that Carter Page's Pfizer-related Woods file documents disappeared, and asked the question, was it malice or incompetence? And I think Q's telling us the answer here. It wouldn't have happened unless it had the 7th floor involvement. You'll remember here that Sarah Carter told us the original Woods file on former campaign advisor Carter Page went missing more than 2 years ago, and according to sources, the documents had to be recreated by the FBI and the special counsel Robert Mueller's team. Q also says follow the logs, and in relation to the logs, and Anon had put this up on 8kun, talking about Sentinel, monitoring, testing or evaluation has been undertaken to safeguard the information and prevent its misuse. Throughout the development process, the Sentinel test team continuously tested the code, including the data access controls, and in addition independent tests were conducted by an independent contractor. Audit logs will be provided to the Enterprise Security Operations Centre on a daily basis for monitoring of potential system misuse, presuming the Enterprise Security Operations Centre is part of the FBI. So Q's telling us, well, there are audit logs, you can figure out what happened, why those documents went missing. And that's all I've got for you on that one at this point. You have to make of it what you will. Then at 1:46, Q comes back on the board and puts up post 4629, and this time he gives us a pic of US Today, Wednesday, September 2nd, talking about QAnon, and the article titled How QAnon is Radicalizing Americans. Conspiracy movement rises out of national upheaval. And Q simply says, in all caps, corrupt, controlled, enemies of the Republic. And I'm presuming here, again I have to presume because I can't tell you for sure, that the inference is that we are, as QAnon followers, corrupt, controlled and enemies of the Republic. Then at 2:53, Q comes back on the board and puts up post 4630. This is quite lengthy. It asks the question, how is blackmail used? And here I get the impression that Q is referring us back to the use of the hammer system by Brennan, Clapper and Obama. It tells us that Democratic Illinois State Representative Keith Farnham has resigned and was charged with possession of child pornography and has been accused of bragging at an online site about sexually molesting a 6-year-old girl. It tells us that Democratic spokesman for the Arkansas Democratic Party, Harold Moody Jr., was charged with distribution and possession of child pornography. Democratic Radar Township Board of Commissioners member Philip R. resigned from his position after being charged with possession of child pornography and abusing children between 2 and 6 years old. Democratic activist and BLM organiser Charles Wade was arrested and charged with human trafficking and underage prostitution. Democratic Texas attorney and activist Mark Benavides was charged with having sex with a minor, inducing a child under 18 to have sex, and compelling prostitution of at least 9 legal clients and possession of child pornography. He was found guilty on 6 counts of sex trafficking. Democrat Virginia delegate Joe Morrissey was indicted on charges connected to his relationship with a 17-year-old girl and was charged with supervisory indecent liberties with a minor, electronic solicitation of a minor, possession of child pornography, and distribution of child pornography. Democratic Massachusetts Congressman Jerry Studs was censured by the House of Representatives after he admitted to an inappropriate relationship with a 17-year-old page. Democratic former mayor of Stillwater, New York, Rick Nelson, obviously not the Ricky Nelson I grew up with, pled guilty to 5 counts of possession of child pornography of children less than 16 years of age. Democratic former mayor of Clayton, New York, Dale Kenyon, was indicted for sexual acts against a teenager. Democratic former mayor of Hubbard, Ohio, Richard Keenan, was given a life sentence in jail for raping a 4-year-old girl. Democratic former mayor of Winston, Oregon, Kenneth Barrett, was arrested for setting up a meeting to have sex with a 14-year-old girl who turned out to be a police officer. Democratic former mayor of Randolph, Nebraska, Dwayne L. Schultz, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of felony, 3rd-degree sexual assault of a child and 1 count of intentional child abuse. Democratic former mayor of Dawson, Georgia, Christopher Wright, was indicted on the charges of aggravated child molestation, aggravated sodomy, rape, child molestation and statutory rape of an 11-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. Democratic former mayor of Stockton, California, Anthony Silva, was charged with providing alcohol to young adults during a game of strip poker that included a 16-year-old boy at a camp for underprivileged children run by the mayor. Democratic former mayor of Millbrook, New York, Donald Briggs, was arrested and charged with inappropriate sexual contact with a person younger than 17. Democratic Party leader for Victoria County, Texas, Stephen Jabal, pled guilty to a possession and receiving over 500,000 child pornographic images. Democratic activist and fundraiser Terrence Bean was arrested on charges of sodomy and sex abuse in a case involving a 15-year-old boy, and when the alleged victim declined to testify and the judge dismissed the case. Democratic Party chairman for Davison County, Tennessee, Rodney Mullen, resigned amid child pornography allegations. Democratic activist Andrew Douglas Reed pleaded guilty to multiple counts of 2nd-degree sexual exploitation of a minor for producing child pornography. Democratic official from Terre Haute, Indiana, David Roberts, was sentenced to federal prison for producing and possessing child pornography, including placing hidden cameras in the bedrooms and bathrooms at a home he shared with 2 minor female victims. And he continues on, Q, and given that he starts off by saying how is blackmail used, you have to assume that every one of those did what they did because someone had found out what they were doing, using, more than likely, the hammer system. I'm making assumptions here. Correct me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. And then post 4631 came on the board at 2:53 my time this morning, and it continues on from the previous post. Democratic California Congressman Tony Cardenas is being sued in LA County for allegedly sexually abusing a 16-year-old girl. Democratic aide to Senator Barbara Boxer, Jeff Rosetta, pled guilty to charges of trading in child pornography. Democratic Alaskan State Representative Dean Westlake resigned from his seat after the media published a report alleging he fathered a child with the 16-year-old girl when he was 28. Democratic New Jersey State Assemblyman Neil Cohen was convicted of possession and distribution of child pornography. Republican Tim Nolan, chairman of Donald Trump's presidential campaign in Kentucky, pled guilty to child sex trafficking, and on February the 11th, 2018, he was sentenced to serve 20 years in prison. Republican State Senator Ralph Shorty was indicted on 4 counts of human trafficking and child pornography. In November 2017, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of child sex trafficking in exchange for the dropping of the other charges. Republican anti-abortion activist Howard Scott Hildreth is a convicted child rapist in Florida. Republican County Commissioner David Schwartz pleaded guilty to molesting 2 girls under the age of 11 and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Republican Judge Mark Pazahanik pleaded no contest to fondling a 10-year-old girl and was sentenced to 10 years probation. Interesting, a judge, he only got probation. Rest of them, jail. Republican anti-abortion activist Nicholas Morency pleaded guilty to possessing child pornography on his computer and offering a bounty to anyone who murders an abortion doctor. Republican legislator Edison Milsa Alderano was sentenced to 10 years in prison for raping his daughter between the ages of 9 and 17. Republican Mayor Philip Giordano is serving a 37-year sentence in federal prison for sexually abusing 8 and 10-year-old girls. Republican campaign consultant Tom Shortridge was sentenced to 3 years probation for taking nude photographs of a 15-year-old girl. Republican Senator Strom Thurmond, a notable racist, had sex with a 15-year-old black girl which produced a child. Republican pastor Mike Hintz, whom George W. Bush commended during the 2004 presidential campaign, surrendered to police after admitting to a sexual affair with a female juvenile. Republican legislator Peter Dibble pleaded no contest to having an inappropriate relationship with a 13-year-old girl. Republican Congressman Donald Buzz Lukens was found guilty of having sex with a female minor and sentenced to 1 month in jail. Republican fundraiser Richard A. Del Gudio was found guilty of child porn charges and paying 2 teenage girls to pose for sexual photos. Republican activist Mark A. Grethen convicted on 6 counts of sex crimes involving children. Republican activist Randall David Anarchy pleaded guilty to attempted sexual assault on a child. Republican Congressman Dave Crane had sex with a female minor working as a congressional page. Republican activist and Christian Coalition leader Beverly Russell admitted to an incestuous relationship with his stepdaughter. Republican Congressman and anti-gay activist Robert Bauman was charged with having sex with a 16-year-old boy he picked up at a gay bar. Republican Committee Chairman Jeffrey Patty was arrested for distributing a video clip of a 5-year-old girl being raped. Q. And then at 2:54 we get more. Post 4632. Republican activist Marty Glickman, aka Republican Marty, was taken into custody by Florida police on 4 counts of unlawful sexual activity with an underage girl and 1 count of delivering the drug LSD. Republican legislative aide Howard L. Brooks was charged with molesting a 12-year-old boy in possession of child pornography. Republican Senate candidate John Hathaway was accused of having sex with his 12-year-old babysitter and withdrew his candidacy after the allegations were reported in the media. Republican preacher Stephen White, who demanded a return to traditional values, was sentenced to jail after offering $20 to a 14-year-old boy for permission to perform oral sex on him. Republican talk show host John Matthews pleaded guilty to exposing his genitals to a 11-year-old girl. Republican anti-gay activist Earl Butch Kimberling was sentenced to 40 years in prison for molesting an 8-year-old girl after he attempted to stop a gay couple from adopting her. Republican Party leader Paul Ingram pleaded guilty to 6 counts of raping his daughters and served 17 years in federal prison. Republican Election Board official Kevin Cohn was sentenced to 2 years probation for soliciting sex over the internet from a 14-year-old girl. Republican politician Andrew Burr was charged with 2 counts of first-degree sodomy with a 13-year-old boy. Republican politician Keith Westmoreland was arrested on 7 felony counts of lewd and lascivious exhibition to girls under the age of 16, exposing himself to children. Republican anti-abortion activist John Allen Burt was charged with sexual assault involving a 15-year-old girl. Republican County Councilman Keola Childs pleaded guilty to molesting a male child. Republican activist John Butler was charged with criminal sexual assault on a teenage girl. Republican candidate Richard Gardner admitted to molesting his 2 daughters. Republican councilman and former Marine Jack W. Gardner was convicted of molesting a 13-year-old girl. Republican County Commissioner Merrill Robert Barter pleaded guilty to unlawful sexual contact and assault on a teenage boy. Republican City Councilman Fred C. Schmelzer Jr. pleaded no contest to raping a 15-year-old girl and served 6 months in prison. Republican activist Parker J. Beener pleaded guilty to possession of child pornography on his home computer and was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison and fined $18,000. Republican parole board officer and former Colorado State Representative Larry Jack Swartz was fined after child pornography was found in his possession. Republican strategist and Citadel Military College graduate Robin Vanderwall was convicted in Virginia on 5 counts of soliciting sex from boys and girls over the internet. Republican City Councilman Mark Harris, who is described as a good military man and churchgoer, was convicted of repeatedly having sex with an 11-year-old girl and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Republican businessman John Gruntheth withdrew his candidacy for Minnesota governor after allegations surfaced that he went swimming in the nude with 4 underage girls, including his daughter. Republican director of the Young Republican Federation, Nicholas Elzerondo, molested his 6-year-old daughter and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. More to come. Q. At 2:55, Q puts up more, post 4633. Republican benefactor of conservative Christian groups, Richard A. Dazin Sr., was charged with rape for allegedly paying a 15-year-old girl for sex. Dazin, 62, who is married with grown children and several grandchildren, has allegedly told police that over the past decade he paid more than $1 million to have sex with a large number of young women. Democratic donor and billionaire Jeffrey Epstein ran an underage child sex brothel and was convicted of soliciting underage girls for prostitution. Democratic New York Congressman Anthony Weiner pled guilty to transferring obscene material to a minor as part of a plea agreement for sexted and sending Twitter DMs to underage girls as young as 15. Democratic donor, activist and Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is being criminally prosecuted and civilly sued for years of sexual abuse that was well-known secret in Hollywood, including underage sexual activities with aspiring female actresses. Democratic activist and Me Too proponent Asia Argento settled a lawsuit for sexual harassment stemming from sexual activities with an underage actor. Democratic mayor of Racine, Wisconsin, Gary Becker, was convicted of attempted child seduction, child pornography, and other child sex crimes. Democratic Seattle Mayor Ed Murray resigned after multiple accusations of child sexual abuse were levied against him, including by family members. Democratic activist and aide to the New York City Mayor de Blasio, Jacob Schwartz, was arrested on possession of 3,000 plus child pornographic images. Democratic activist and actor Russell Simons was sued based on an allegation of sexual assault where he coerced an underage model for sex. Democratic Governor of Oregon Neil Goldschmidt, after being caught by a newspaper, publicly admitted to having a past sexual relationship with a 13-year-old girl after the statute of limitations on the rape charges had expired. Democratic Illinois Congressman Mel Reynolds resigned from Congress after he was convicted of statutory rape of a 16-year-old campaign volunteer. Democratic New York Congressman Fred Richmond was arrested in Washington, D.C. for soliciting sex from a 16-year-old boy. Democratic activist, donor and director Roman Polanski fled the country after pleading guilty to statutory rape of a 13-year-old girl. Democrats and Hollywood actors still defend him to this day, including Whoopi Goldberg, Martin Scorsese, Woody Allen, David Lynch, Wim Wenders, Pedro Almodovar, Tilda Swinton and Monica Bellucci. Democratic state senator from Alaska, George Jacko, was found guilty of sexual harassment of an underage legislative page. Democratic state representative candidate for Colorado, Andrew Myers, was convicted for possession of child pornography and enticing children. Democratic Illinois Congressman Gus Savage was investigated by the Democratic-controlled House Committee on Ethics for attempting to rape an underage female Peace Corps volunteer in Zari. The committee concluded that while the events did occur, his apology was sufficient and took no further action. Democratic activist, donor and spokesperson for Subway, Jared Fogle, was convicted of distribution and receipt of child pornography and travelling to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor. Democratic State Department official Carl Carey, under Hillary Clinton's State Department, was arrested on 10 counts of child porn possession. Democratic Maine Assistant Attorney General James Cameron was sentenced to just over 15 years in federal prison for 7 counts of child porn possession, receipt and transmission. Democratic State Department official Daniel Rosen, under Hillary Clinton's State Department, was arrested and charged with allegedly soliciting sex from a minor over the internet. Democratic State Department official James Cafferty pleaded guilty to 1 count of transportation of child pornography. Democratic radio host Bernie Ward pleaded guilty to 1 count of sending child pornography over the internet. And Democratic Deputy Attorney General from California, Raymond Liddy, was arrested for possession of child pornography. And I think that's where it ends. No more dots, just signed off Q. And that's a massive amount of people who have got affiliations with political parties, both Democrats and Republicans, all involved in what appears to be sexual malpractice, of course. Look, one of the easiest things you'd have to think of when they want to get rid of someone is to put child pornography on their computers. I'm not saying that any of these people were not guilty of what they've been charged with, but it does open up the door to at least think about, well, were they blackmailed? Is this how they got rid of them? They either found out using the hammer system, or they planted information using the hammer system. And then the last drop that I can find from Q at this stage is post 4634, came on the boards at 2:57, and Q simply said, why did it take a political outsider to finally confront China? Q. And looking at it on the board, Q Anon says, because the political insiders are comped, blackmail is a powerful thing. Someone else says, because he's an outsider not owned by China. Infiltration versus invasion, because all politicians are owned by China. Make of it what you will. Who are they talking about? Who is the outsider? I don't know. It's hard to keep up with all these different things that Q's telling us about, and as the days move on, we've probably already covered this, but while I sit here thinking about it, I can't tell you any more. And also, before I finish up, please don't give me comments about my mispronunciations of names. Honestly, if I'm mispronouncing them and you are confused as to who I'm talking about, then there's a problem, but I'm sure you're not. You can read the screen at the same time I'm talking. I know a lot of people don't like the way I pronounce the names and they try to instruct me, but it won't stick, guys. It won't stick. Next time I see that name, I'll probably mispronounce it again and again. And I also know that I mispronounce the names of counties and other places that overseas, just as you probably would if you had to read some of the names here in Australia. It's just one of those things. I don't need to see the comments saying I got it wrong. And now I've just tried to refresh and I get a bad gateway trying to get back to QMap Pub. But when I go to QAG, there are no more posts, so that's where I'm going to leave it. I got medical appointment this morning, I've got to move on, but I'll get back and do my normal video and any more catch up on Q Post later today. Stay safe, stay sane. Cheers.